And welcome back to another episode of Performance That Matters. This is an episode I've been looking forward to for a long time because this guest is one of the biggest and most well-known names in all of nutrition across the world, and he happens to be a very good friend of mine. I've worked alongside Tyler Minton for many years, and I've seen the excellent work that he has done, and I'm really, really excited for you guys to get this. I've had Tyler on my other podcasts, and every single time Tyler's come on, I always get flooded with messages saying, please get that guy back on. I love listening to him. You guys need to do more episodes. So I thought, what better way than to get Tyler Minton back on Performance That Matters. Tyler, thanks for coming on.
Awesome, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's I think I said it the last time I was on your podcast. It's the two best accents put together on one episode.
Yeah. If you're someone that likes accents, this would just be stirring crazy. But Tyler, before we get into the questions, you have done something pretty monumental since we last spoke, and that's putting two little letters at the end of your name, and that's RD. Tell us about that journey and why that's so significant.
Whew. Yeah, that was a long one. So, I finished my bachelor's many years ago, 2010. Always had the goal of finishing a master's program and then getting my registered dietitian credentials. But life happened. At that point, I was a professional fighter and stupid enough to think that I would make a career in professional fighting. A lot going on, and I just put all that on hold. And then several years ago, honestly, at the worst possible timing, I had a newborn baby and decided I was going to go back to school and get my master's and just finish it all. And it was about another 4.5-year process. But I finished that, and it is initials, but I learned some stuff. I am in, as you know, I was in that small group of people that didn't have the registered dietitian next to my name, but it was also my life and my career. So, I wasn't like the personal trainer that just like looks up nutrition stuff on Google and then tells people what to do. It was actually already something I had dedicated a large portion of my life to the education portion of. I just had to make it official. So now I can say Tyler Minton MS RD, and apparently that matters.
No, congratulations. It was awesome to watch from afar because, like you said, Tyler, you were working with some of the biggest names in the UFC. Khabib Nurmagamadov, Max Holloway, Dan Cormier. You were doing it. And like you said, you had the bachelor, you had all the knowledge. I've seen you. I've worked alongside you. You've taught me endless amounts of information. And it's a funny system, right? Because you've kind of got to get the registered dietitian if you go down that clinical route. But what you and me do, it's not clinical. It's not really anything. Maybe there's a box now that we could classify ourselves in many, many years later. But back when we were starting, absolutely not. And you just burned that path. And then while you were doing that at the top level, going back to university and doing a master's degree, plus having your family, plus doing everything else that you do with your training and exercise, it was really cool to see. So congratulations.
Oh, man, I appreciate that.
So talking about working with some very, very high level people, you were just on tour with one of the biggest celebrities in the world, Jelly Roll. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So that was an interesting thing. And it all came together because of another friend of ours, Ian Larios. We both worked with Ian. I've done so many cards with Ian. We've worked together in the MMA world. And Ian is like a full-time chef. Like we kind of like his role is like executive chef and wellness director for Jelly Roll. And, that's a busy job. But Ian actually lives and owns a business in Bali. He owns a restaurant in Bali, lives in Bali. So he would come to America and spend all these like long periods of time with Jelly Roll. And Ian's been instrumental in Jelly Roll losing as much weight as he has. And really changing his life. And there's a lot of things out there of Jelly Roll, talking about that and how much Ian's meant to him. But, again, Ian lives in Bali. So Ian contacted me and asked if I would be interested in coming on board and helping with the process and finding ways that my talents of a registered dietitian and my experiences can add value to what they're already doing. And that he could also have someone that's more local, because not only am I not all the way in Bali, I actually only live a few hours from Jelly Roll. Have someone more local to have a more hands-on approach when Ian needs to go back home. So it worked out great. It's Ian's someone, like I said, that we've both known for years. I've known him for, gosh, probably about 8 years. And, it's a cool thing because one of my biggest goals, and we've had this discussion because I know it was a huge goal with yours. When you and I both came into the MMA world, there was so much drama among nutritionists. It was like there was just so much drama, and everyone was trying to make a name, and they were trying to make that oftentimes by smearing other names. And I was like, man, I don't want any part of that. Like, I want to be a positive light. Like, I want to be a light in this business. I want to bring light to others because no one person can work with everyone. So why don't we all just become friends and really build that? So it's really cool because I can say confidently that me and you and guys like Ian and Charles Stull at the UFC Performance Institute, like, we've been instrumental in making that to where this isn't individuals like going after each other in nutrition. It's actually people who have their own businesses, but we kind of work together and build off of each other. And I think that's been hugely helpful for the MMA community, but it's also branching out into other things like this, like that relationship that he and I already had.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that Ian's finally getting some flowers too, because I still have recipes that Ian taught me 6-7 years ago that I still use with my top fighters. He's an amazing chef, and he just recently won the MMA World Trainer of the Year award in Las Vegas. And I know that was a huge goal for Ian for years and years, and I'm so happy that it happened. It's good to see Ian finally getting his flowers because he's doing amazing work. He's working with some of the best guys. He's got multiple world champions, Bilal, he's had Jamal Hill, he's got so many other top names, and he's got the amazing Larios Kitchen, which I'm heading to Bali shortly, so I want to go over there and get it because Ian is a far better cook than you and I, so I'm definitely looking forward to getting some food. Oh, yeah. But let's get into this, Tyler. So let's first question off the bat. Let's start this with a super, super easy question. Why is healthy eating so confusing?
This should be an easy question. Man, I think it's so confusing because there's so much out there. It's the paralysis by analysis situation. There's so much information, and so many people are championing their information as the only right way to do it. And you just have all this dogma, all these dogmatic approaches. And unfortunately, the world we live in, people assign expertise based off of things like Instagram followers. Like, someone looks at an Instagram following and determine the level of expertise someone has, or even the attractiveness. They'll look at how someone looks and determine that this is someone I need to listen to. And oftentimes these people with a huge following or the 6-pack abs, oiled up, working out in the weight room, that's giving advice, they can grab people's attention better than a lot of the professionals with sound advice. So because of that, you have so much information that's going around, and it's just people don't know what to trust. And ultimately, a lot of nutrition comes down to personal choice and people and responsibility. And people don't like that. People don't like to be faced with the reality that they are the difference maker and really the only difference maker. So if someone can come in and tell someone like, hey, it's not your fault, it's actually because of this secret ingredient that you didn't know about, but I'm going to teach you what that is, and that's going to change your life. That's sexy to people. Like, hey, it's not my fault. It's the food industry's fault, or big pharma, or, I was eating carbs and I wasn't supposed to eat carbs. I didn't know that. So people fall into that trap of feeling like it's something that was missing and someone presenting that information in a very sexy or alarming manner.
What are some things that you can think of off the top of your head? Because the first thing that comes to my head is Liver King, right? Like, and Liver King, like, don't get me wrong, like, I had look at that in two ways where I go, hey, look, I run a business, I have a marketing team, plus I'm a health professional. So I look at it in both sides and I go, man, from a business marketing perspective, that's amazing. Like, the fact that he's been able to build this character, build this little business where he sells all the ancestral tenants and everything off of that. I look at that and go, man, that is phenomenal. Like, that is a great layered business system. That is textbook, really. He just pulled it off textbook. Then health professional me looks at that and goes, man, that's just so crazy that people will buy into it. But why is it, Tyler, Why is it that people will look at something like that? And I think everyone, right? Everyone must look at that and go, I kind of smell BS on that. Like, look at the guy. Like, come on, I kind of smell BS, but I want to believe it. Why do people want to believe it?
It's a good question. I think a lot of it is in the entertainment aspect. People want to be entertained. My most popular, I put out a lot of free education, and I kind of will joke around with my wife. Like if I create something and I'm like, dude, this has so much quality information, I'll tell her before I post it. I'm like, this will get no attention.
Yeah.
And then I will post some silly, funny meme, and it just blows up. Like I have some funny memes and videos out there with like tens of thousands of likes and shares. I'm like that, no one grew from that information. Like that was, but again, people like to be entertained, and that's entertaining. And I think that's just honestly the world we live in. Like we live in a world where reality isn't reality. It's very much, I think it all started with reality TV shows, which, I've been on a couple of them, The Ultimate Fighter, Broken Skull Challenge, things like this. So I know firsthand that, it's a forced reality. It's fake reality. But, this is the era of people who grew up on that. And then you have the next era, which is like my kids who are growing up in this age of YouTube where, again, it's all just this fake reality that I think sometimes people have a hard time pulling themselves away from that and asking the question of how much of that is real and how much of it is just entertainment.
Yeah, that's a very important take, right? Like that fake reality, because I often talk to people about social media and I say, man, social media is literally the lens in which you choose to see the world. Like you can look out a certain window on either side of your house and see two very different views, depending which way you want to look at it. And the people you follow, the things you see on social media will quite literally dictate the information that goes into your brain, and that will feed your thoughts and your beliefs and then eventually your habits. So what you see on social media, as much as you may agree with it, disagree with it, has a huge impact. I often think, Tyler, and how much do you agree with this, is in this world, in this somewhat pseudo reality, it's almost like when it comes to health, there's so much conflicting information. Say, even with that great post that you put up and it tanks, it doesn't get it, it's probably tanking because it's going through all the nuances and the contextual information that you need to make a good decision, which kind of ultimately comes back to that point where you go, you know what, like there's a couple different avenues you can do it. Depending on what you want to be doing at this time in your life and what your specific goals are, you could go left, you could go right. That could look more carnivore, that could look more animal-based. Now, for this, you need to be eating a really high-carb diet. But people don't really like that. People don't love that, right? They want a definite answer. And do you think in this pseudo reality, when they're looking at guys like Liver King or some other Instagram, prolific figures, and they're just going, you know what? You don't have to think. This is the answer. Go absolutely this, and this will solve all these problems.
Yeah, no, I think that's a large part of it. And everyone lives on an algorithm now. Like everyone, the information you get, like if I take like, we'll use politics as an example. If I take like one of my super Republican friends and one of my super Democrat friends, and then we were to look at their Explorer page on Instagram, like I guarantee you, in fact, I know this, I've played this game. Like we look at my super Democratic friends algorithm, it's going to be all this just enraging stuff about what the Republicans are doing. And if I look at my Republican friends Explorer feed, it's going to be all this enraging stuff that the Democrats are doing. And it's all just designed. And I'm not trying to put on like a tinfoil hat and become a conspiracy theorist here. I don't think it's necessarily designed to create dissension and drama. I think it's designed to keep people looking. And you're much more likely to engage in things, again, that are attractive and sexy or alarming, one of the other. So if I can scare people with the prospect of death, like the one thing you are not doing, they have that creepy AI voice, the one thing you are not doing that could kill you. People are more likely to sit there and say, okay, let's keep watching this. And every second you watch that BS information, Instagram is getting hits saying this person is interested in this kind of thing. So you start getting more of that information. So it's tough. I say it all the time. It's really hard to get rich telling the truth. It's extremely hard. And, I think people like me and you and others are trying to find a way to play into what what's going to get us the attention, what's going to get us views, we have to play into that a bit, but with a clear conscience. We have to play into that so we can get our message across. Because ultimately, I have to get my message across for my family and financial reasons. Like I got to put a roof over our head. I have to get that information out. And just for the pure passion and my love for helping people, I have to figure out ways to get people to see that. And just giving truthful, honest information isn't guaranteed that people are going to get it.
Yeah, I think it comes down to as well that, like you said earlier, a lot of this is boring, and a lot of good nutrition and health science requires a lot of critical thinking. And if you think back, and you don't even have to have gone to university, think when you're in high school, if you're doing in a project or an assignment or something and you're having to research, it's definitely not fun. Like scrolling on your phone and seeing funny videos or going out with your friends or having a beer or anything that gives you a dopamine kick is a lot more fun than sitting down and scrolling through research papers and putting all ideas and challenging thoughts and then coming to a consensus. It's quite boring. But that's really is the center of this entire thing, right? Where we go, all good health and nutrition science is just critical thinking. But that doesn't really fit in well with the social media dopamine model, where someone wants to come in, I don't want to see Tyler and Geordie just dissect this paper and tell me why all these carnivore videos that I just saw pump in my feed for 2 weeks that just kept getting heavier and heavier, why they may not be right for me. No, that's boring. I don't, even if they're right now, stuff it. I want to get my dopamine hit. And it's quite concerning, right? Where you go, oh man, like, I've done it many times where I've put out things and I go, man, there's so much good information in there and no one's really looking at it. And then you put up something that's kind of like, meh. And my team, and I'm sure your producer and your media team probably say the same, oh, it'll go off. And it does. And then you go, oh, yeah, but I kind of don't want that to go off. Like I want the good stuff to go off. It's a funny world.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very frustrating, especially in being, being guys, we're at a little bit of a guys with these kind of ears, we're at a little bit of a disadvantage too. Like no one's going to like stop scrolling and be like, wow, look at that guy. I'm going to keep hearing what he has to say. So like I got to put images and stuff up there to attract people.
Yeah, 100%. Now, Tyler, there's a famous quote that gets around social media that I know for an absolute fact that was coined by none other than yourself. And this quote, once I say it, gets around. And I want everyone to know who's listening to this, it was in fact Tyler D. Minton who created this quote. And it says, calories determine what you weigh, macros determine how you look, and micros determine how you feel. Can you elaborate on that and explain why that concept is so important for people to understand if they're trying to be healthier?
Yeah. So you get mostly that quote gets one of two kinds of people. It gets someone who, I had this literally yesterday, like, oh, that's stupid. That's simplified. That's obvious. I'm like, well, if it's so obvious, why is like nutritionists, influencers with millions of followers sharing it and claiming as it is their own, that's because it is obvious and it is simple. But when you take it and you simplify it in that way, it's like, oh, that kind of explains pretty much every major tenet of nutrition. Calories determine what you weigh, and that's it. Like calories are the only thing, truthfully, that determine what you weigh. The other things are subheadings. They're bullet points of that. But no matter what, if you are not in a calorie deficit, you will not lose weight. Won't happen no matter what. If you are in a calorie surplus, you will gain weight no matter what. So at the base level, calories determine what you weigh. But that doesn't explain everything. It doesn't explain how you look, and it doesn't explain health. Macros determine how you look. Because if I'm eating in a calorie deficit and I'm losing weight, but I am severely under eating protein, I'm not going to maintain the muscle mass to get the lean look that I want. And when people say like, I want to lose weight, most times they still have a vision in their head of how they want to look. And that's a lean look. It's not a scrawny look. I hate using this term, but everyone knows what it means. It's not skinny fat, so macros are going to determine how we look with that within the calorie model. That's why calorie comes first, macros second. And then micronutrients, or I've also seen it quoted as quality, I've used both, determine how you feel. Because ultimately, if you're taking into account the right amount of calories to manage your weight, you're taking in enough protein to maintain muscle mass, but you're eating a low quality diet, low in fiber, low in micronutrients, low nutrient density, you're going to have some honestly positive health factors influence, because if you lose weight, no matter what, you're going to see some improvements in health. But ultimately, in long term, you're not going to see the overall health improvements that you would see on a high quality diet. And I put them in that order for that purpose, because if we were to flip that on its head and we prioritize it that way, quality determines your health, or macros determine how you feel. Sure, that's great. That's true. But if you're getting plenty of good quality micronutrients, but you're not losing weight, it's not really going to improve your health that much. Like an obese person that's hitting all of their micronutrient numbers, they're not going to see many positive outcomes from that. And that is why it's in that order. And again, it's simple. It's simplified. It's simplifying a very complex thing, because it doesn't take into account the psychology of nutrition and all of that, but it takes all of the finest details and puts them in a very digestible, easy to understand formula. And I think it was pretty cool, and it's been wild to see so many people claim it as their own. I actually had a guy who is the nutritionist of some of the greatest NBA players in basketball share it and try to claim it as his own. And I actually commented on his thing. I'm not going to say who or anything. I commented on his thing. I said, that's mine, but it's cool. And he was like, oh, well, can you, prove it? Then for the first time in my life, I got to say this really douchey comment. I'm like, Google it. And if you Google it, okay.
No, it's awesome. You know why I love it so much, though, Tyler, is that I think it sets up this really cool framework that doesn't abolish your nutritional beliefs, but it allows a framework where all nutritional beliefs can be welcomed, and we create this system where we can go, hey, you know what? Let's start critically thinking about whatever food preferences that you have, whatever food means to you, whatever way of eating that you like, and let's put it through this framework and let's just see how it stacks up. Because you could look at that and then someone could come to you and those guys in the gym, and you see this a lot with, say, beginner bodybuilders or whatever, and they'll go through the if it fits your macros phase, and they'll go, bro, it doesn't matter. Like, as long as I'm hitting my calories, I'm going to be losing my weight, my body fat, whatever. I'm going to be drinking my protein shakes, high protein. You can go through this list. Okay, you are eating in a deficit, so you are losing the body fat. Your resistance training, that's pretty good. You're slamming ridiculous amounts of protein shakes, so you've got a good total protein intake coming in. But then you go down the macros and you go, bro, you can literally achieve all of that. You can have a protein shake and Krispy Kreme diet and achieve those first two things and get pretty shredded. And you could probably get on stage and look pretty good with that. However, 5 years, 10 years down the track, if you're not hitting those macros and you're not getting all the workers to go in this big factory that is your body, the factory ain't going to work very well for very long. And you can do that for all thoughts of nutrition. If someone comes in, hey, I want an animal-based diet, or hey, I want to do keto. Hey, I've got a 400-kilometer running race. What's the best way? You can go through this framework and you can go, okay, what type of foods do you like? And let's go down the list and let's make sure we're ticking. And that could be, hey, if you're an athlete and you're training a lot, you know what? You don't need to be losing weight right now. You need to be getting a lot of calories in. So you need to be getting all of these calories. So we need to tick that. You probably need to be eating 4,500, 5,000 plus calories a day. That's a lot. Let's go through your macros. What does that look like? Okay, you're running all of this. Yes, we need our protein. We need our muscle. We need a good amount of carbohydrate. But you know what? You're going to probably need a lot more fat than the average person, because it's going to be very hard for us to hit those numbers if we don't have that. But you know what? Like Tyler said, we need to get those macros. You need to get those macros in. How are we getting that in? It's an awesome framework that I've used in my practice where we can just distill this info and go, hey, all thoughts and beliefs are welcome. Let's just make sure we're ticking these boxes.
Yeah. If you look at it like a filter to filter things through, and then you expand on it, like, again, like the macros determine how you look. I use the protein and muscle mass a lot because that just resonates with people. But for a fighter, we'll look at that like, how do you look? Like, well, you looked like crap during training. That's how you look. Well, that's because your carbohydrates aren't set where they need to be. So it is. I do think it's like I've used the explanation before that it's kind of like a filter that you have to filter everything through and check off those boxes before you determine if it's a good thing to follow or not.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. And I also love this next quote. And I think it's timely because we're coming to the end of January at the time of recording. 3 New Year's resolutions everyone could benefit from: drinking less alcohol, walking more, and lifting more weights. What do you mean by that?
I'm not trying to like jump on. It is popular now to jump on the anti-alcohol train, and I do think that's a worthwhile train to be on. Studies are showing that young people are drinking less now than young people did 20, 30 years ago, which is, I think, is outstanding. No one ever looked, I don't think, no one ever looked back on their life and said, you know what, I wish I would have done more. I wish I would have gotten hammered more. Like, no one like ever really does that. They're like, I wish I'd have had more fun, like things like that for sure. But man, like if alcohol has to be the lubrication for you to have fun, like there's some issues there. Um, and what I mean by that is there's nothing harmful about eliminating any of those things or lowering those things or changing those things. If we drink less alcohol, that is a net positive, period. Like it is. We finally know that from the research. There's finally research showing that. I also say the safest, most healthy amount of alcohol to drink is none. The second most healthy amount is as little as possible. It's just a fact. Like there's no net positive from alcohol consumption. So it's always a good idea to look at times and areas we can limit it or we can eliminate it. I had someone ask me if I was doing dry January because I was with a friend for his birthday and I had an old fashioned. Like, oh, you're not doing dry January? I'm like, dude, I don't drink enough to need a month away from it. Like, I don't, it's a very rare thing for me. But, so it's never a bad thing to lower that. Walking, what was that, dude? It's been a while. It was walking and resistance training, working at lifting weights. Walking is the low hanging fruit that a lot of people just don't grab. Like it is zone 2 cardio. Like study after study have shown how much just walking can change your life. And the fact is, it's the one thing most people can do. I don't want to say everyone because we have to look at different. There's the social aspect there. We have to look at the world as it is, and the honest truth is there are places, in America especially, there are places where there's not a safe place to walk, and that's just a fact. But most people, especially on a health and fitness journey, can find a way to walk, or they can find a position, a place in their schedule to walk. I have a conversation with a client the other day. She works 2 jobs. Just she wants to. She's married, has kids. And I told her you should start walking every day. Like, this is the first thing I want you to do before we start looking at working out yet. I just want you to walk every day. It's like, well, I don't really know when I'm going to fit that in. It's like, okay, can you take 30 minutes away from your evening job, which is a self-employed job? Can you take 30 minutes 5 days a week and do that and throw a walk in? She's like, no, I really can't. I'm like, okay, well, can you take 1 hour, 1 day a week? She's like, I think I can do that. Okay, go walk for an hour, 1 day a week. 3 weeks into it, guess what? She found out that there is a day she can also do 30 minutes here. We're just kind of like building that habit to where like now she's finding time she can walk, and health improvements from that. Then the next thing is strength train, lift weights, resistance train. Again, that's something else. There's mounds and mounds of research showing the benefits to lifting weights for increasing basal metabolic rates, joint health, cellular health, mental health. There's no harm to it as long as you're doing it safe. So for me, there were 3 things that no matter what, they result in a net positive, and most people can find a way to add those in.
Well, I think this next one is a perfect segue into that because it's probably something that you will hear, and we hear it a lot with our clients, right? Especially when they're coming in, they might have been scrolling a bit too much and had a bit of info put through their mind that may not necessarily be the best. But what would your response be to someone, they come in, they come into Ethos Nutrition, they sit down in front of you and they go, Tyler, my metabolism and hormones are the reason I can't lose weight. I've tried everything. It's just my metabolism. My hormones must be out of whack. It's just not working. What do you say to that person?
Yeah. So the thing is, you do hear that a lot, and I recently posted like a funny meme that is blowing up over that. Um, because I do hear it a lot, and it is frustrating. And I don't want to oversimplify it to the point that I say that like that is not part of the reason, because it can be part of the reason. And by that, what I mean is it can influence it, but influence does not make the ultimate decision. So, do your hormones and your metabolism, do they play a role in weight loss? Absolutely. Like your metabolism plays the full role. But this idea that they're the reason you can't lose weight is to say that you have no control over those things. Like, no matter what you do, your metabolism and hormones are in a position where weight loss cannot be achieved. Like, that's just not true. Like, we know that's not true. And if I lock you in a room without food for 7 days, you're going to see evidence that that's not true, because you are going to lose weight. I'm not saying you're going to be healthy from it, but the fact of the matter is calories will still determine your weight, period. It doesn't matter. Now, is there a chance that your metabolism is slower than what it should be, and therefore that makes weight loss harder? Yeah, there is a chance. That being said, it's also a small chance. Like, we've seen studies with that too. Like, there's not as many people that have a slow metabolism as they think they do. Most people have not lived a life that would cause a slow metabolism. They've not gone through these extreme dieting. Ironically, a lot of times it is something you see in athletes, and people who are in incredible shape are oftentimes the people who actually do have slow metabolisms, because what it's taken for them to constantly lose that weight and stay at that low body fat percentage has kind of hurt their metabolism, but they're still managing to lose weight. Um, so yeah, I get frustrated, because to me it's lazy, and it's putting that into, again, people are looking for ways to take excuse off of themselves. And again, like, your metabolism might affect it, your hormones might affect it, because ultimately that might make you more hungry. So therefore, your calorie intake has increased. It might make you more tired, so therefore your calorie output has decreased. That's cool, but you can still ultimately make some dietary changes to decrease your calories and increase your work output.
Yeah, and I think out of any two people who can have a comment on this, you and I are probably in a good position, because, like you said, you have to do a fair bit of damage in order for this to be a real thing. And it is a real thing. It absolutely is. We see this when you go do metabolic testing with fighters who have gone through this extreme yo-yo dieting phases for long periods of time, where they go up and then they just put their body through so much stress. But like you said, it's a very extreme process that the everyday person probably isn't going to be exposed to. And probably the only other area you'd see this is in the eating disorder space. And one of my best friends, Megan Bray, she's a world leading expert in this area. And we often talk about this, and she sees it in practice too. But again, this is long-term chronic adaptation to very extreme environments that very likely the everyday person that's coming in to just lose some weight probably won't be experiencing. I often say to them, and it may be a little extreme of an example, but it does get the point across. And if they say, you know what, like, Geordie, my metabolism must be playing up, my hormones must be out of whack. And I went, man, imagine if I drove you to the desert, I kicked you out of the car, I threw you 2 gallons of water, and I said, I'll be back in 5 days. You'll survive. You have enough water to survive, and you've got enough calories in the fat that's in your body right now that you'll survive the 5 days. Do you think when I come back, you're going to be the same weight or less? You've got water, you'll stay hydrated, but you're going to lose that body fat, regardless of what you think your metabolism is doing, because you just don't have the input of food. Your metabolism isn't broken. And often, people will often come in and they'll say, yeah, look, I'm in a calorie deficit and I'm still not losing weight. And it's like, well, no, you're not. You're not in a calorie deficit. And it's not that people are lying to you. People aren't lying to you. I think they genuinely believe they're in a calorie deficit. It's just that you're not in a true calorie deficit. You think you're in a deficit. You just don't have the education around, okay, what's actually in the food you're eating? How much are you actually burning? You're just relying on this Apple Watch to tell you how many calories you should be eating, how much you're burning, and then are you measuring that oil that you put in that cooking? What about that bit of extra sauce? What about those nuts that you were nibbling on? Are you taking all that into account? And when you really dive into it, it's no, you're not lying. You're just probably misinformed about this whole system, and we're maybe not accounting for everything. And when we really dive deep into it, And then we give this extreme example of you sitting in the desert, we can kind of usually always come to the same conclusion of, oh yeah, maybe I'm not tracking as strictly as I should be.
Yeah. Yeah. I tell people, I'm like, you're in an estimated calorie deficit. Even if I think they're lying, I give them that. Like, I don't point that out. I was like, I think you are, based off of whatever information you've received. I think that you feel that you are in a calorie deficit. Now let's figure out the ways you might not be in one. And then we ultimately determine you're not.
Yeah, and I think this next question is a good one because it kind of goes along this same theme that I guarantee, I know for a fact, a lot of people that you'll be consulting with, a lot of people we consult with, they come to us with this one, and that's intermittent fasting. Because from the outset, it seems like a great idea in terms of, hey, if I do this, I've seen all this on social media, it will make weight loss way easier. Do you recommend it? Do you not recommend it? You do? What are your thoughts on it?
So if we put it through that filter, calories determine what you weigh, macros determine how you look, micros determine how you feel. Like it checks that. Like it checks the boxes. That being said, you have to look at the individual, the general population. It's going to pretty easily check those boxes if you, in your feeding period, it's going to help you with the calories because you have a smaller feeding period. And the fact of the matter is, if I have less time to eat, chances are I'm going to eat less. So there, that ticks that box. Ultimately, if it helps you reach a net negative on calories, you'll lose weight. Okay, macros. That is where it does get a little bit tricky, and the scientific literature shows that if we take two people, normal time eating, like regular times, say eating 5, 6 times, 4 times a day, whatever, on normal, no time constraints, compare that with someone that's been intermittent fasting, and we have two comparable people on two comparable deficits, we see that the intermittent fasting person oftentimes loses more muscle mass, even though they've lost the same amount of weight. That's because, it's not been completely identified, but I think this is very, I'm confident saying this, that's because it is far harder to hit protein numbers in a time restricted window. Protein's super satiating. It's very hard to do that. And a lot of times intermittent fasting people, they're doing that. They're fasting so much so they can reward themselves by the end of the day and eat kind of whatever they want. And that's usually not like a 12-ounce steak, So I do think, if you can get the macros accounted for during that time, you can make it work. Macros, to me, that's easy. That's just personal choice. The same choice that someone under a normal time eating has to take into account. You just have to very much ensure that you're doing that. You have to make an honest effort for that. So I think that it can be beneficial for the average person. Where it starts to become a problem, I see, is with athletes. Because then when we put it through that lens, like it can check 2 of those boxes, but it's going to be a little bit harder to check that macros determine how you feel box, because you're not really getting macros if you're training early in the day. And that can be super problematic, especially because, like we're dealing with athletes that are eating a lot of freaking food. Just because someone's in a calorie deficit doesn't mean it's a lot of food. And if we have a very short window to get that food in, we're trying to get all that, and we're going to expose you to GI issues, digestive issues, and all of that. So ultimately, and I've changed my mind on this a lot. I was like vehemently anti intermittent fasting, and then I kind of just had an honest look at myself. And I'm like, well, why? Why? Like, what's the issue? Especially if it's not an athlete, if it allows you to do that. And I've used it. I use it with myself a lot, especially because sometimes for me, it's just mornings. It's easier for me as a father of a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old to get sometimes work done in the mornings. And if that means I can skip a meal to have an extra 30 minutes to do something, I'm going to do that. But what I do, because I also know it's going to be hard for me to hit my protein goal is, and this is what I have a lot of my general population clients do, is it's kind of like intermittent fasting, but technically not, is they wake up in the morning, they get a shot of protein, and then they just save their other meals for later in the day. So like sometimes I'll wake up, do a 50-gram protein shake, and then just go about my day, and then I'll eat my first real meal at lunchtime. And then it kind of saves meals, especially if you're on a calorie deficit. That's kind of a cool way to do it because it saves more of the things you like to indulge in, even if those are completely healthy. Like my lunch today was rice, for my carb. But it allows you to save those for a little bit later in the day, but it still ensures that you're hitting that protein number.
Yeah, intermittent fasting is a super interesting. I'm very similar with you, Tyler. I've gone back and forth. I think because we spend so much time with athletes, like you said, it's
Yeah.
quite difficult when you've got someone training 4+ hours a day just to rationalize and go, man, like it's not that you can't do it. It's just not favorable for whatever this goal is. This
Yes.
performance goal that we have here, it just doesn't work in terms of you optimally recovering from that training session and then rocking up to your evening session. It just doesn't fit. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It just doesn't fit for what you're doing. But I recently had a very good friend of mine, a middle-aged guy, very successful business owner, great guy, very smart too, but just struggling with his nutrition. He said, man, I've jumped on the scale. It's the heaviest number I've seen. Anything you recommend? He goes, I kind of want to try intermittent fasting. I went, all right, before I give you my thoughts on it, just try it. Like, just try it. And you know what? I'm not going to give you any other thoughts about it, but just try it and see what happens. Message me 3 weeks later. He goes, man, I've put on weight. And I thought you would. And he goes, why? Why did you think that? And I went, because my honest opinion for a lot of people that do it is exactly what you said there, Tyler. I think the underlying motivation is if I do this, I can eat whatever I want in this eating window. And that's not how it works. It's not how this works. Coming back to your point, there's got to be some ownership. There's got to be some responsibility. You've got to go through this framework. It still applies. You can't just skip food until 2 p.m. and then pat yourself on the back and get that little dopamine hit. And I think a lot of people this relates to where I go, I just achieved something really cool. It's the same hit that people when they get up in the morning and go for a run or lift some weights or do some jujitsu or do whatever. When you finish that class, you get back, you take your shoes off, you go, man, I just achieved something really cool in my day that's going to set my day up. I really do believe you get that when you fast till 2 p.m., but it doesn't change your overall health behavior. It doesn't change your nutrition knowledge. And so if you just go, that was awesome. I just did that. I'm going to go straight to the tea room and I'm going to have cake. I'm going to have a burger. I'm going to go back. I'm going to do this. And the other population that we see this a lot with, I'm sure you agree, Tyler, are the keto crowd, right? You go, hey, if I just cut out all carbohydrates and do really high fat, I can eat burgers and put extra cheese and I can do it. I don't even have to think about the calories. I don't have to think about anything. I'll eat whatever I want. It's almost like, no, that's not how this works. It's not a system where it's a cheat code or a hack where you can just put whatever in your body and the end result. You've got to go this framework. Are you getting the appropriate macros in? Are you getting the appropriate calories in? Are you getting the appropriate micros? And it's very, very interesting because I really do believe it comes down to that. A lot of people who intermittent fast, it's like, well, you've just got this sense of accomplishment, but where you fall short is you don't have the knowledge of this framework of how the rest of your day of eating fits in.
Yeah. I had this conversation with Rob Wolf years ago, who Rob's the reason I got into nutrition. Rob Wolf is the writer of the Paleo Solution. He's a big keto guy now. He's the owner of Element. But years ago, him and I had this discussion about that. He was a big fan. He's changed his thoughts now. He's a lot more, I want to say, almost kind of like liberal on some nutrition thoughts. But he was a very big fan of non-measured, non-weighed, non-restrictive paleo diet. And I told him, I was like, man, but just like in some areas, that's not a real thing. And I was explaining to him, he's a West Coast guy. I'm like, you're a West Coast guy. Eating till you're full and stopping and leaving leftovers is a little bit more normal for you than say me and where I live. Like I live in an area where people were born and raised to eat every single thing on your plate because you're lucky if you have it. Like that's a very normal thing in Appalachia. It's still a thing. I have to pull myself back from that with my own kids. Like, hey, like you need to finish well, I'm not hungry. You know, as parents, sometimes you're like, well, you need to finish it. Like, do they though? Because like we're teaching them to no longer listen to their satiety signals and finish everything in front of you. So like, I have to be very mindful of that myself. And I was explaining that to him that too, like you give me endless amounts of Paleolithic foods and say like, yeah, eat as much as you want. Like you better believe I could eat 2,000 calories of cashews. You know what I'm saying? Like it's still very easy to do. And especially with different mindsets. And I'll say this because I don't shy away from it. I've posted on Instagram. I've talked about it. But I have had an eating disorder in my past, right out of wrestling in school. Like I battled an eating disorder, and I'm recovered from that, but I still know that I know my triggers. I know that I can binge eat and with complete ease. I know my personality. I know my hunger signals. So yeah, I absolutely can't do that. So with me, something with intermittent fasting, I have more education and knowledge and sense of things that I know that if I'm intermittent fasting, I'm doing it just to save maybe some calories for later in the day, but that just means more rice or more potatoes or more, animal fats, things like that. Like I'm not instead saving that. So at the end of the day, I can do high calorie, low volume foods because I know how easy that can rack up.
Yeah, I love that. The psychology of eating. That's so important, right? And that's something that I tried to get across with my good friend who I went through this process with. And the next thing that I did with him after he came back and he went, man, I just put on weight after I did this intermittent fasting. What the hell? Like that doesn't, I went, okay, man, that's fine. Don't stress about it. Let's dig into this a bit more. Do me a favor, download this calorie tracking app and be honest. Like it's just between you and me. It's fine. Like I'm not going to judge whatever you're eating. Just put it on there and then we'll jump on a call. We'll go through it. So he did it. Did 3-4 days of eating, and he texted me after the first day. He went, holy crap, this is very insightful. He goes, I've never done this before. I've always been scared of weighing food. I've never wanted. I've always listened to people who said, oh, calories don't matter, don't blah, blah, blah. And I went, well, at the end of the day, they do matter. They do matter, and it's really important. But what also matters just as much is how do those calories make you feel? And let's start making some connections here. And he goes, I go, what'd you find? He goes, oh, one, yeah, I eat a lot more calories than what I thought. I didn't realize that X amount of food had so many calories. I didn't realize when I'm free pulling the oil into the cooking pan, there's that many calories in there. I didn't realize that when I'm going to the tea room in between meetings because I'm really stressed and that's a trigger for me to go grab something sweet. I didn't realize how many extra calories I'm getting from that. And when I'm holding off all morning, I'm feeling like it's a justification or no, you know what? I can do this because I done that. And I went, yeah, do you see how this is a bit more complex than just what this little system is? Now, let's have a go at intermittent fasting. Now, let's set some calorie limits. Let's set some macro limits. Let's get some foods that you like and let's play around with them and see how we can make these a little bit better. Let's make sure you're ticking off those micros. And now let's try this intermittent fasting. He did it for 5 days and he goes, man, I don't want to do this intermittent fasting. This is ridiculous. I don't see why anyone would want to do this. He goes, now that I'm eating good amount of protein, I understand I need to get these carbs in. I'm eating these good fats. I am now appreciating what my triggers are when I'm sitting down and when I'm stressed out. He goes, man, I feel so much better if I just get up in the morning, have a good healthy breakfast. He goes, I love bacon and eggs. And because I'm getting a fair bit of calories in the morning, I know I'm going to have a light lunch. And he started introducing salads and instead of managing his stress with going to the tea room, he went, yeah, you know what? I do get stressed out in these morning meetings, which flows over to my lunch. I go for a walk now. I go for a walk and that's how I manage it. And I go, see how it's a bit more complicated than what you think at face value? And it took a long time and all that digging deep, right? And he goes, man, like the funny thing, and this is when I'm coming back to this point of the psychology of eating, he goes, man, after all these calls that we have, we've spoken about nutrition for probably 20% of the time. I feel like what you do is very similar to what my therapist and my psychologist, I go, man, it's pretty much the same thing. There's a huge psychological impact.
Yes.
The psychology of eating flows into everything.
Yes. If I could go back, I would not do a bachelor's in nutrition at all. I would do a bachelor's in either business or psychology and then do my master's in nutrition. Because it is so much, or maybe I'd have to get a doctorate in psychology to fully understand all of it. I tell people all the time, the science of nutrition is very simple. The psychology of nutrition is incredibly complex. And that's essentially all we're doing. We're managing the psychology. And that's where it gets difficult is like, for instance, so like what if we're talking about working with, this is a big business guy you're talking about. So if we're talking about like a CEO or so if I have someone that's more affluent, just to be honest, like their money is less of an object to them. Like I know that like, hey, we can kind of take our time. Like they have that, or just someone who's entrusted me with it. They're like, hey, like I'm here for a year. Like maybe it's going to be tough, but I'm here for a year. We can have that exploratory phase. And I love that because we can kind of let them come to some conclusions. One thing I like to do is, I've probably said this on your last podcast, was I make people or have them make a list of 5 to 10 things they know that they're doing wrong right now. Like, give me this list, 5 to 10 things you know are standing between you and the goal you just told me you had. And they write that out. I look over it, and sometimes there's some that I'm like, no, that's actually okay. But then I slide it back to them. I'm like, okay, for 30 days, stop doing these things. And then it's like, yeah, you're paying me to tell you that, but this is the fact. The fact of the matter is, these are things that you have already decided in your mind need changed. So if you can't change these, like, what are you going to do with new information? Like, I want you to change the things you already know need change. Then we'll start throwing in new information. And during that exploratory phase, we learned so much about the person that we're able to make some serious changes in month 2. And, with some people, you don't really get that phase because, like, you want to be respectful of their time and money. And it's like, hey, we're going to start like throwing darts right off the bat and hope we start hitting some things and then work with it. But I always think it's better if you like have a month of letting them come to some of their own conclusions. I have a guy who's a former NFL player, now is just a businessman. But with him, that was when I first started working with him. One of the things he was talking about, he's like, man, I don't like eating breakfast in the morning. He's like a wake up at 4 a.m., work out, immediately like get on business, like looking stuff up, very motivated dude. It's like, I don't like eating breakfast in the morning, but I just know that I have to because it's important to me. I was like, well, why do you have to? It's like, I actually don't know. I've just always been told I have to. It's like, do you enjoy it? He's like, no, I normally just grab something and rush out the door. I'm like, do you feel better when you eat breakfast compared to when you don't? It's like, no. All right, cool. Let's stop. So like we stopped eating breakfast, and he did intermittent fasting. And then we found what I expected. This is like a 300-pound dude. We couldn't hit our protein numbers. I'm like, okay, cool. Let's first thing in the morning, let's get a shot of 50 grams of protein just in shake form and then go about our day. And that's how we do things. And it's fantastic. But we're managing the other things. Like meal 1 starts about 12 to 2, and meal 1 is managed. It's high quality, but it's a larger meal because he got to take that off. And the second meal of the day is it's a larger meal. And this is a guy who had struggled before because he'd worked with people that were like having to do 5, 6 small meals a day. And I'm like, dude, this guy didn't get to be 300 pounds. I mean, obviously there's genetic factories in NFL, but this guy didn't get to be 300 at that point, like 340 pounds, because he doesn't like large meals. This guy obviously likes large meals. So let's find ways to help him eat large meals. This 5 or 6 small meals a day thing, that's insulting to a man of that size. So again, it was like finding what works for him and his psychology and fitting that in. And there we go. It's made huge results.
Yeah, this next one is interesting because I feel like longevity is very on trend at the moment. And you know what, Tyler, maybe it's just that we're not in our 20s anymore. We're getting older, and maybe we need to start thinking about that. And therefore, we're working with more people who are thinking about this. But I think there is more discussion in this space. And I feel like, again, whenever there's this discussion, it's a hot topic, you will get a lot of the fad diets. You'll get a lot of the influencers coming in and out and adding their 2 cents. And this is why I love this quote that you said, the one thing you can start eliminating from your diet starting today that will add years to your life, excess calories. Explain that one to us.
Yeah, if you're eating more calories than you need to support a healthy weight, stop. Because we know that take away, and again, that's why calories, if we put it through that filter, calories are the top one, because we know that no matter what else you do, if you eat less calories than you burn and you lose 5% of your body weight, it's actually even like 2 to 3%, but we'll go with 5. If you lose 5% of your current body weight and ignoring how you lost it, in fact, it can even be with some unhealthy methods. But if you lose 5% of your body weight, there's pretty significant improvements in blood markers. It's like, we know you've already achieved better health by losing 5% of your body weight. That's a calorie deficit. So again, like we do know this, and we sometimes get in arguments I have with these people that are talking about lifespan and autophagy and things like that. We do know that honestly, the what we see in studies about longevity is a low calorie diet is better for longevity. So like we used to try to fight that, and then I kind of got to thinking, I'm like, yeah, I'm fighting that but honestly, I'm trying to fight that through the lens of someone whose goal isn't longevity. So like if I look at someone, Max Holloway, like, dude, you're trying to tell me to make Max live longer, I got to feed this guy less calories. That's bull crap. Like, well, Max isn't trying to live long right now, and anybody who's seen Max fight can attest to that. Like Max is trying to perform really well. So like, yeah, that's not even the focus that he's looking through. Like that's not a thing. But if longevity is the ultimate goal, then yeah, we start looking at that. Like lower calories is better, and ultimately, even a large amount of muscle mass does not necessarily equate to a longer life as you get older. Like those things kind of don't. So again, I think it depends on the lens that you look through, but the average person needs to lose weight. So by eating less calories and starting to achieve that calorie deficit, it's just, again, a low-hanging fruit. You are automatically going to be healthier for doing that.
Now, with that statement, we're definitely going to get a bit of pushback because there is an entire crowd and audience that disagree with that, right? And a lot of that crowd fits in with a framework which we call health at every size. What would your counter argument be to someone like that, Tyler, that goes, yeah, you know what, there's no evidence, or the evidence is so weak that if I lose weight, it actually makes me healthier? What do you say to someone who brings that proposition to you?
I mean, again, I'm in a weird place now. I'm not a weird place. I'm a very mature place in my life. Where I would say, okay, like let's find out if there's any truth to what you're saying. And let's filter that down. Like, okay, can you be healthy at any size? Like, well, first we've got to define healthy. I define healthy as optimal. Like, what is optimal? Like, dude, like I could look good, run marathons or run whatever that thing is you do that's like multiple marathons in one. Um, like I can do all of these things, but still have high blood pressure. So am I healthy? I mean, and by a lot of markers, yeah, but am I optimal? No. I mean, that's not. So can you be optimal at any size? No. Now are there potentially anomalies? Well, absolutely. Like there's absolutely anomalies. And I hate it when people like hone in on an anomaly. I'm like, well, you're telling me it's impossible. Like, listen, like at one point people would have said what Michael Jordan did was impossible. And then he did it. And since then, LeBron James and all these other guys have. You really want to get people going, get them on the who's the GOAT, LeBron James or Michael Jordan. That might be the most offensive thing we could say. But it's Michael Jordan. But you can, like there's always anomalies, but we're not trying to talk about anomalies because we're talking about the general population. No, like health at any size is not a real thing. Can you be obese and then be healthier in 3 months than you were before and still be obese? Absolutely. Again, we just talked about that. Lose 5% of your weight. Does that mean you've optimized health? No, absolutely not. You're still not where you need to be. And honestly, I don't know. I don't know what it is. Actually I do know what it is. I think it's laziness and I think it's complacency. So I'm mature, but I'm still not holding my tongue completely. I do. I think it's laziness. I think it's complacency. I think people want to feel that way. That being said, I also think that they're the extreme on the other side that's making people believe that size equates to health is equally damaging, equally if not more damaging. That's just simply not true by any metric. You can be the perfect size and be horribly, horribly unhealthy, and you might even be the perfect size and have worse health markers than someone who is obese. Like I can be the perfect weight, but have higher cholesterol than say someone who is obese and has good cholesterol. Well, by that health marker, they're healthier than me. So again, I think you have to define health, and I think you need to look at health on a constantly evolving spectrum, and that's where I'm at in my own life. Like, dude, I'm 37 years old, and I want to tell you something here. So I'm 37 years old, and number one, every year I have resolutions, financial goals, business goals. Those are different than financial. So financial goals, business goals, personal goals, like personal growth goals, and fitness goals. My number one fitness goal this year is to be able to sit on my heels.
Wow.
That sounds crazy. I have not been able to sit. I'm a BJJ Black Belt, and I cannot touch my heels to my butt. And I've not been able to do that in like 2 decades because I've had so many knee surgeries and I have not addressed my joint health appropriately. I've not addressed that. I've addressed other things because last year my goal was to make my legs grow. I wanted bigger legs, and I achieved that. But that's cool, but I didn't get more flexible. So did I really get healthier? No, I look better in shorts, So it's like, that's the thing. My goals have changed. I was a professional fighter when I was 19 years old. And at that time, all I had was a performance goal, and I would do anything it took for better performance, even at the sake of my health. Anyone who's ever seen me fight has seen that. Like, my health came secondary to if I won or not. And as I get older, I'm looking at things, and ultimately for me, it came down to, it was several months ago, I was wrestling with my kids, and like, I like struggled to get up, and I still train jiu-jitsu weekly, but that's like, my body's gotten used to that. Like, I can do those movements, but this was late at night. And like, I think I had like worked out earlier that day, probably done jiu-jitsu too, but still I'm playing with my kids, and like, I struggle to get up. And then they're like, Dad, let's go again. I'm like, no, let's do something else. I'm dead serious. Like, I'm saying this as like a challenge to myself. And I'm like, no, can I turn on Bluey? Which, Australians, great job. That is the greatest. It's, yeah, next to The Office, the US version is probably the greatest show ever. Like, let's just watch Bluey. And dude, I was so upset with myself. I'm like, dude, you just took your kids who wanted to wrestle with you and put them in front of a TV because your joints and stuff are aching too much for you to wrestle with them. Like, dude, it was like a shot to the gut. And literally the very next day, I hired a coach to help me with my flexibility and mobility. And I've been doing that 3 to 4 days a week, like just improving that, because that was an aspect of my life that was not healthy. And there's people that are out there that are more overweight than me. They have worse blood pressure than me, worse blood markers than me. They're not as lean as I am, but they're more flexible. So they're healthier than me in that aspect of their life. And at that point in time, I would have rather have had that health than any of the other stuff. So again, I like, health is it's constantly evolving and constantly changing. And I do think that at any point, if we put a pin in it and say, I'm healthy, like, you're done. Like, because again, that's going to change for you down the road.
Yeah, that just makes me think next time we roll, I am 100% going for your leg straight away, and I'm going to knee bar you or heel hook you straight away so you don't get on top of me and smush me. But I was just looking up the overweight and obesity rates in the US. In the US, it is 73% of adults are either overweight or obese. And here in Australia, it is all the way up to 66%, so 2 and 3. So it is a very valid claim. And again, it's a complex issue. And I love the point that you make, Tyler. Health needs to be defined for you, because at the end of the day, and I'm sure you've seen this, I remember being a student in clinical practice where I did a year and a half in oncology and pal care, and it was very, very insightful. And some of the things I saw in there is that not everyone cares as much about their health as you and I do. I had patients in there who were very sick. They were sick from, say, smoking every day of their lives. They knew smoking was bad, yet they would still smoke. They would still do it. We would still have to bring them, certain people, alcohol. We would still have to do certain things that are not health promoting habits. But for them, I would rather do this. For me, I would rather do this. So defining what is healthy for you is very important. I think that whole point, though, if we come back to the excess calories, we see it so much in practice. We see it so much in practice, especially when someone's coming for a constant weight loss, or they have all these other problems that are going on, whether it be joints, whether it be whatever. And we go, man, if we just sit down and we give you some fundamental education and we go through this process and we even go through that framework, and we look at the macros, we look at the micros, we look at your calories. When you get to the calories point, almost 9 times out of 10, people sit there and they go, yeah, I really do get a lot more in than what I realize. And having that realization in itself, and then starting there and then going through the framework, is so, so, so powerful. And again, like we keep saying throughout this podcast, You can do whatever in terms of a nutrition strategy and diet. You can use that framework to do whatever, whether it's keto, animal-based, whatever. Just tick it off. And like Tyler's saying now, define your goals for what you want to do. If being healthy for you is being able to bend over and touch your toes and do cartwheels and parkour, whatever. If you don't care about your blood cholesterol, you don't care about whatever, just define it, go through that system and do it. But I think this last point is really important, because even me sitting here and talking about it, like, I'll admit, a lot of my clients, we work with top business guys, CEOs, we work with affluent, top level, elite level athletes, high performers. Something that's been the most rewarding thing I've done in my work in the last, I'd say 8 to 10 months, is we've created a men's group, low cost entry men's group, fat loss group, so we can open it up to far more people and give those guys access to this. That's by far been the most rewarding, but it's also made me realize, man, so many people in our society just can't get access to this information purely to cost. And this is the last quote I'm going to read, and it's probably the favorite. This is probably the most impactful thing, and you do a lot of impactful work, Tyler, but when I read this, I went, that is so true. That is so absolutely true. And it says, the fitness space suffers from a lack of empathy. Not everyone has a safe space to work out, has access to appropriate healthcare, or has access to high quality food. Most influencers step over the needs of low socioeconomic families to speak to the financially affluent, and you're all assholes. Tell us about that post.
Before you do, how many likes did that get?
I don't know. Too many likes.
Can you see? I think no, it didn't get a lot, but I mean, it got enough. But I think that got like maybe a couple hundred. But then if you go to a silly dog one I posted a couple weeks ago, I think it's at like 30-some thousand.
Wow.
So to go to the other point, like this is a point that I'm making, a point that has like, oh dude, like I'll get emotional. It drives me absolutely crazy. Like we have everything we say about health and fitness, we need to look at through the lens of like a social lens. Like, who are you speaking to? Like, who are you trying to change? And the fact of the matter is, most people are only trying to change the lives that can pay them. You know, and it's like that's the truth. I've been there. I've done that. And like, dude, like one of the best decisions I ever made was when COVID happened. I lost everybody. I lost everyone I had. At this point, I was only working with, I was charging very little for my services, and I was working with fighters. Well, fighting shut down, and then people that were paying my low rate are like losing their jobs. They're like, they can't, or they're paused their jobs. They're worried about what's going to happen. I lose everything, and I have a baby on the way. And a guy that I really respected in business told me, he said, well, that's because you were charging a rate that people are affected by COVID. He's like, dude, you got to charge more, so you're getting people that those little financial woes aren't affecting them. I'm like, dude, like that, I hate that. But I did it. And my business, I grew like 150% in 2 weeks just by charging. I think I charged like 15 times more at that point. And all of a sudden my business blew up. But I felt so bad about it. And at that point, this all happened within like 2 days. At that point, I said, well, you know what? I'm going to change my Instagram now to just education, free education, because those are the people I want to speak to. Like, I want to give out enough. And I always ask myself this is like, am I giving out enough information that someone could only follow me and change their life? And yes, I know I am, because I constantly have people message me and say that they've lost weight, they've changed their lives just by following me on Instagram. And that's awesome. Like, if I'm just looking at it as a businessman, well, that's money I lost by not having a Patreon and making them pay me for that information. But that's not how I'm looking at it. I'm like, holy smokes, like someone who probably would have never hired me to begin with, just changed their life through information that I just gave them. That was just on the top of my head anyway. Like, I feel like nutrition's my gift. I genuinely do. Like, I feel like, and I think that I was an obese kid when we were poor. Like, I was very low socioeconomic status, obese kid. I went through that. Then I became the wrestler. And all of a sudden I was like the cool kid for the first time in my life, because I had muscles. I was like beating people up. I had cool ears. So people started respecting me. Well, then I became bulimic because I got so obsessed with that. And that's all I wanted. And then I became the professional athlete, and then I became the dietitian, all this guy who's trying to help people through all these positions in their life. And I do think like God let me live through all those things so I can speak to people where they're at, because I've been where they're at. I genuinely feel that way. So I always try to meet people where they're at and provide information that's tangible. And you have to look through that lens when you're trying to talk to people. So if I'm sitting here and saying like, oh, we need to ban this and that and start banning all these things, I'm like, well, why? Like, why do we need to ban red 40 or red number 3? Because honestly, most of the people I see championing those bans and saying we need to do that are people who can already afford to shop at places that avoid that anyway. Like, you don't have to eat red number 3, like things with that in it. You don't have to eat things with red number 40 in it. You don't have to choose those things. Like, you have the money. Most people that are I see doing this, like, you have the money to not do those things, and you still are. But you're forgetting about this whole group of people who maybe the closest safe spot they can get to is a Dollar General, and all they really have is access to processed foods. What are they going to do when you start banning all those things and you force these food companies to start charging a higher rate for their products? Like, those people don't deserve to be healthy. Like there should not be a financial barrier of entry to becoming healthier. And it just bothers me that the fitness world has become that. And a lot of they know that. Like when I said like you're an a-hole for doing it, it's because a lot of people, I do think there are some people who they think that they're in the right. They're not thinking of that. Like, if we're looking at people like the people that are, it's not their business, they're not their profession. They're just on Instagram saying like, we need to take fluoride out of water. We need to do this. They genuinely feel that. And they're not thinking about how that'll affect other people financially, because they don't make money off that. But then the people, the Gary Breckas and the people who are championing these things, because they're then going to sell them the solution, the $100,000 solution to pad their pocket, they're the jerks. Because again, it's like if I can't be poor and buy into your system's BS. Like, it's a joke to me, because again, like, you're not trying to change everybody. And I'm more passionate about helping general population and that's why I'm currently working on like scaling my business. I literally just paid the final large deposit on an app that I'm having an app built. And the whole purpose of this app is to work with more general population people at a cheaper rate. And the reason I want to do that is because if I can change the way, we'll take it back to a fighter. Let's say I help a fighter make weight easier. That's awesome. That's cool. Most fighters, as you know, that's helping them in that portion of their life. And when they retire, that's not helping them. And in fact, they're probably not going to call me back and ask what to do in the next phase of their life. But even if they're not going to take that information and change their life from it. It's going to change their career at that point. But if I can change the way that a 40-year-old mom of 3 views nutrition, then I have the chance of making generational change. Because if she changes her thoughts on nutrition, hopefully her kids grow up seeing those, and maybe it sets her kids on a different trajectory than it would have. And then maybe it changes their kids. And that's the way you have to do it. I think when you try to help the least of these, if you try to help the people that are being overlooked, you have a greater chance of helping more people if you do that, in my opinion. And that's where you start to look at, like, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to create a business that makes you a lot of money? And no, that's great if you want to. Or are you trying to really change lives? Because ultimately you can do both. But if you just do the one, I think you're a prick. Like, I just do. Like, I just very, very, as you can tell, I'm very passionate about that. And we're at a part in America where that's very frustrating, because we do have, as everyone's seen, we have with Trump being elected, there is the Make America Healthy Again movement. And I love that in a lot of ways. I love that there's conversations around improving the health of Americans. Obviously, like you just read the statistics, 70-some%, that needs to happen. But that needs to happen for all Americans. And I've yet to really see and hear people talking about things they can do to make high quality, healthy food cheaper and more available nationwide. Like I'm not really seeing that, and that's what hurts me. And like you see this, I got an argument with again, I'm not saying this general, this is literally her situation. So a stay-at-home mother of a very high-earning husband. So a very wealthy stay-at-home mom saying very aggressive things about raw milk and why it's just absurd that you can't get raw milk in our stores here, and how she gets it. She drinks raw milk because she gets it from a farmer and all this, and just like literally like calling out parents for giving their kids pasteurized milk. I'm like, who? And I called her out. I'm like, who are you speaking to here? Like, what? How do you expect? Like, let's say that there is truth to it, and there's not. That raw milk is that much healthier than pasteurized milk. You're like, okay, how are we going to get raw milk to everyone? Have you ever thought about that? So let's like, good luck finding a small farm and putting it in Compton or Harlem. Like go to one of these like ghettos and put your small farm there and let's see how that goes. Like, how are we going to get those people raw milk that's been unpasteurized and it's not had this process done to make it safe so everyone can get it? Like, okay, so are we going to say those people just don't get it? Well, now let's look at the health statistics of kids who grow up drinking milk and those who don't. There's significant health differences in kids that drink pasteurized milk and kids that live in country and they don't have access to dairy milk whatsoever. So like, what are we really trying to do here? Like, if you want to drink your own milk, cool, keep doing it, but mind your own business and let other people do what they need to do to be healthy.
Man, yeah. I love so many points of that. No, even on that last point with the raw milk, I encourage everyone who's listening to this. Dr. Ids did a very, very informative debate with Metabolic Might over this exact topic, raw milk versus partial milk. And long story short, Dr. Ids just went through all the evidence. And by the end of it, Metabolic Mike basically said, yeah, look, there is way higher risk if someone's drinking raw milk. And I think to your point, which I think is more important, Tyler, to your example, you can probably afford to go to the doctor if by the chance you do get sick from drinking raw milk. You can afford to go to a doctor and get treatment for it. A low socioeconomic family who give that in the thought that this is better for their family probably can't. So why would we be doing it when we know we've got a safe alternative to it? And I think the other thing that you said that's so, so true. A lot of these people that you see on social media and a lot of these guys that promote eat steak and eggs every single day, make sure you're having fresh food and blah, 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 doing this and that. It's not their profession and they don't have to see the consequences of that messaging where you and I do, where we have to sit in front of people every single day and we consult with them that go, hey, you know what, this person told me to eat 3 steaks a day and have eggs and then do this and that. And now my cholesterol's through the roof and I've got no money and I actually probably can't afford to pay you. So I don't know what we're doing here, but I need to reach out because it's a time of crisis. And you go, holy crap, like this is ridiculous. It's actually ridiculous because you've got these doctors or these people or psychiatrists that have it's not even they don't have knowledge in nutrition. They absolutely do have knowledge in nutrition. You don't have to have a degree. You don't have to have a master's degree to have knowledge in nutrition. We all eat every single day, but you do have to be able to think about it critically, and you have to have a good enough sample size of experience with people to see, okay, that works and this doesn't within the population that I'm talking to. And when you don't even work in that area, that's just not even an option. That's why we see younger practitioners often struggle because they don't have the experience. But when you see someone like yourself, Tyler, that's helped literally thousands and thousands of people, you can very easily sit there and go, okay, there's a raw milk discussion here. I can look at both sides of this argument. I can assess the science and I can say this, but you know what? In my experience, if you're talking to this very, very affluent housewife here, yeah, maybe they can consider it because there's all of these factors that are in their favor for them to do so. But that ignores probably 95% of the population. So that's probably not good messaging for me to put out as a health practitioner who's doing this consciously to help people. So it's a very, very important distinction.
I saw something recently. It said, how come it was, another one of those, things you see, but it said, how come you are seeing more and more people come from a clinical background to holistic, but you never see someone go from holistic to clinical. And I'm like, well, I can give you a few reasons, because the holistic person has probably found a way to manipulate people to make a lot of money saying completely bogus stuff that they don't really have to like invest in education for. And it, you know, the clinical person isn't in it for that, because I promise you, it was not fun doing clinical rotations where I am sitting here speaking with an emaciated, malnourished World War II veteran, trying to help this guy eat enough to survive, and he's food insecure. I'm like, this dude is one of the, he's from the greatest generation. And this is a true thing that happened, obviously. It's from the greatest generation. This guy is literally, his issues are because he's not getting enough food. And one of the reasons he's not getting enough food is because he's losing his teeth. He can't eat that much, and he's poor. So like, he's broke. He can't afford much. And then even when he can afford, he's having a hard time eating. But he doesn't really have the money, because our healthcare system is so screwed up, to get the things that he needs. So we're trying to sit here and figure out ways that we can write all of these, ways we can write orders to maybe get it to where insurance will give this guy free insures, just so we can get some form of nutrition that he can do. And insurance companies are trying to fight us on that. So it's like, you don't have to deal with that. Like, you didn't go to school, and you didn't have to do clinical rotations, and you didn't have to see those things. Like, you didn't have to deal with that. So that's why it's easy for you to sit here and make these claims, because you don't know that. Like, they don't know that actually in the elderly population, being malnourished and underweight is far scarier than being overweight or obese. Like, they don't know these things. They've never dealt with it. So it's one of those ivory tower situations. And, like, I've changed, I remember being a 18-year-old personal trainer that had that attitude, like we all have the same 24 hours in a day. Yeah, right. Tell my wife that. Like, like the mother of 2 kids, like, not a chance, man. So again, like, as you're exposed to more things, you're hopefully, you evolve, and you start to change your beliefs, and you start to look for that. Like, you try to look for, okay, who is this nutrition recommendation? Who might it be alienating, or who am I maybe not thinking of? Because again, everyone deserves to be healthy. So we need to make sure that we're talking to those people and thinking about those people too.
Yeah, I think last point that we'll make on this before we move on to our very last 2 questions that we ask every single guest. I think the point you said there is so, so important, and I just want to acknowledge it, because you and I can sit here, Tyler, and we agree. Like, I agree. Like, everyone should have access to high quality foods. Everyone should be eating mostly whole foods, less processed foods. They should be doing all of these things that we know if you do that over a longer period of time, you will be healthier. But right now, when you look at the majority of the population, it's just not realistic. So it's almost like, okay, maybe this new administration does do it. They somehow pull it off and they make America healthy again. And 10 years down the track, that is the case. Every school kid has access to a very nutritious, amazing lunch. They have access to that food. They can fill their bellies. They can get the calories. They can get the micros. They can do all that. But the reality right now is that that's not the case. And you and I and other nutritionists, dietitians, we have to sit in front of people with what we have right now, and we have to do what's best by those people. And a lot of the time, that is, okay, like you said, you only have access to food stamps and processed food. How can we make that better for you? Because I know you can't afford to go get porterhouse ribeye steak every single day and feed your kid organic foods and get raw milk and everything. You have to treat the person that's in front of you for the situation that they're in.
Yeah. No, I'm reflecting. It's such a tough thing. I mean, it is. It's because again, I live in a very poor region of the United States, so it's something I see often, and it's why I do so much. Like, it's very rare that someone asks me for advice and I don't just give it, because I don't. If I can maybe tell you something that helps you, and you didn't pay me for it, but it wasn't that much effort for me to tell you, like, I'm generally going to do it. Because again, I am very passionate about trying to help all those people as much as I can. I just think they get overlooked. And man, if Trump or whoever can do it, I don't care who it is. But it has to be done. And that is where you start. You have to make these things more accessible. And I don't really know how you do that. If it's subsidizing farm, what, I don't know how you do it. I'm not a policymaker. I don't know those things. I just know that it has to be changed. Something has to be done. I mean, the healthcare in America is insane. The rest of the country, I know places like Australia are like, you guys pay what for insurance? It's absurd. And again, most people just, you genuinely, it's getting to a point where where more and more people cannot afford to be healthy. And that is just crazy. And again, I don't know the solution. I just know like we have to have one.
Yeah, I agree. And that's a great discussion. It's an important discussion. And it's one that a lot of people don't have. It's a lot of podcasts and a lot of very influential people will sit here and talk about protocols and wake up and do this. And like you said, Tyler, they're really just talking to an affluent crowd, aren't they? They're just not really talking to the mass populations. And I think that's very important. But let's wrap this up. There's 2 questions that I ask everyone that come on the podcast. And I'm very interested to hear what your answers are. Now, speaking broadly, I always ask this first one because I went for a run with a really good friend of mine who's a fighter jet pilot. And he asked me this question and it kind of stumped me. I went, oh, wow, that's like very interesting when you think about it. And what do you say? And since talking to him and talking to a whole bunch of other people in my network about it, the variation in answers were just so phenomenal and interesting. I'm very interested to hear yours. How do you define performance?
I think being able to efficiently
take your time,
do efficiently what you're tasked to do. And the way that I explain that is I tell all my clients that no matter what, you have a performance goal, whether you realize it or not. My NFL client's performance goal is very easy to define. That's better blocks, more tackles, faster, stronger. It's very easy to define. But how do I define that for my mom, 64, 65-year-old mom? Performance for my mom is being able to walk up and down my stairs with my 4-year-old in her arms, being able to pick up my 4-year-old. Like that's performance. So I think I know how to explain it, but I do. I think that it's being able to efficiently do whatever tasks, the higher level tasks that are asked of you at the stage of life you're in. Because again, like I'm not expecting an 80 or a 90-year-old to perform in the same metrics that I am my 25-year-old NFL client. But I do want them to perform. I want them to be able to, same thing we see, like, again, if we're working with a patient in a hospital during clinical, like they might have physical therapy to be able to sit up in bed and feed themselves. That's performance for them. Life-changing performance.
Yeah, I love that answer. Last one. What is performance to you in your life?
Yeah, kind of answered this earlier. For me right now, performance for me in my life is one of them is to become more flexibility. But I want to continue to I want to be good at jiu-jitsu. I'm a jiu-jitsu black belt. It's important to me. I get really annoyed when people get their black belt and quit. It's silly to me. But I've been the last couple of years, I've had a lot of injuries that have had to make me take breaks in my jiu-jitsu journey. And I hate that. So therefore I'm addressing that. And all of those issues have been from the wear and tear that I put on my body. So now I'm addressing that. So for me, at this point in my life, performance is to still be able to do those things I do, to work out, to train, but it's to also be able to play with my kids more and match their level of energy, if not exceed it. Like I want, when I told my 7-year-old the other day, he's like, Dad, when will I be able to beat you up? I was like, absolutely never. There'll be a time, but it is up to me to make sure that doesn't happen. It's going to happen, but I want that to be well down the road. But I look at other dads, and I'm not trying to like make anyone feel bad, but I'm 37-year-olds. I look at other dads my age and I'm like, dude, they can't even go like race their kid. Like they can't they can't go do those things. They can't go play basketball aggressively with their kid. Like I can still do those things, but I want to be able to do those things when I'm in my 60s, and 70s. And that's kind of where I'm at now. I'm looking at that. How can I perform for a really long time? And how can I undo the damage I did when I was at a point in my life where performance just meant harder, faster, stronger for longer? So now I'm trying to undo what that performance did so I can find this level for a much longer time.
Yeah, love that answer. Now, no doubt, because this happens every single time we get on a podcast, I get inundated with messages and they all say, how do I get in contact with Tyler? I want to work with him. Is there social media? Is there an email? Is there a website? Tell us how the people can get in contact.
Yeah, so TylerMintonNutrition.com or Tyler Mint Nutrition is my Instagram handle. Those are the same things, and those will both lead you to my website, which is Ethos Nutrition Coaching. So Ethos Nutrition is the name of my business. Ethos is important to me, but I've made sure that my name is the thing that can lead you there. That's where you're going to find more information. I've got a lot of things going on. I have a podcast that drops next week, January 28th. I have an app that's being developed. It should be done in 4 to 6 weeks. All that information you'll be able to find soon on my Instagram and website. I'll be posting more of that out there.
And what's the name of the podcast, just for the people listening?
Truth Serum with Tyler Minton, because that's all we're going to do. We're going to be telling the truth and interviewing people and finding out what truths they have to tell. And it's not like purely even a nutrition and fitness podcast. Like I'll have professional athletes, professional hunters, and truth is a different thing for different people. So we're just kind of exploring that with everyone.
Yeah, love that. All right, Tyler, I'm conscious of your time, but thank you so much. Every time we talk, there's so many nuggets of wisdom that get put out. Yeah. I'm sure this is going to be an absolute hit, but I'll let you get back to your day. Thanks so much, mate, and look forward to chatting again.
Real quick, though, I do want to say one more thing, because this was also on my resolutions, is if you feel something, we always say if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. Well, if you have something nice to say, you need to say it. And like, I was determined I was going to tell you this. Like, dude, I'm so proud of what you've done and how far you come. It is, I don't even remember when it was. Like when I first worked with you, like I was sent to kind of like head a thing. I was so jet lagged, I don't even really remember, because I just come from Brazil and then go straight to, I got the Zika virus in Brazil,
remember it,
to Australia. And you were so kind of like newer to fighters and all that, and just kind of breaking into it. And like where you've gone from there to here is just unreal. Like it's such a cool thing. And dude, I'm like tickled to death for you. And same thing I kind of said about Ian earlier. Like, it's just cool to see people like you who have dedicated their life to this, like being successful with it. Because again, man, I think you speak in a way and you educate in a way that you can change lives. So I'm glad that you're growing and you're becoming, and you're famous in the nutrition world. And I like that for you, because the more people that learn about you, the more people have the capacity to have their lives changed. So just want to tell you that. I'm proud of you. It's really cool to see.
Nah, and I appreciate it, Tyler. Like you said, there's such a good group of us. And like I said, you've mentored myself, Ian, a lot of guys. There's like Dr. Matteo, we got Eric Pena. There's a whole good group of us that have been in this for 6-7 years now. And like you said, I feel like the tides of this industry have changed a lot, and it's awesome seeing everyone support each other and everyone do well. But I will let you get back to it because I know you're busy. Thanks so much, Tyler, and we'll chat soon.
See you, buddy.